Hi everyone, welcome to my review of M. Night Shyamalan's Signs in 2002. Here it is on the set, and of course, yes, tonight a rewatch of Signs. This is a free box set here, and finally, got around to rewatching this. The last time I saw it was March last year, and yes, been really looking forward to rewatching this, as I've said before. And yes, another Shyamalan review, and yeah, of course, if you check out my other reviews, see what I think of them, but I love them. They're in my top 100, both of them films, Sixth Sense and Unbreakable. And yes, this film, this is probably when, it became a bit more divisive, Shyamalan films. Really, as I've said before, the Sixth Sense is the only one that's really, both critically, commercially, and, with fans, very, very just popular all around, really, you could say. There's not much people that really hate on that, but a lot of the other ones really, even Unbreakable has, people that don't think it's great. A lot of people are very, very split or, completely wholly hate, a lot of the rest of his films. This is the one, of course, the ending especially, people kind of just thought, no, not for me, kind of thing. And, as a kid, I saw this a lot. This was one of the films that I watched, the most as a kid. Probably seen it, well, certainly over 30 times in my life. And yes, it's my most watched Shyamalan film. It was my favourite Shyamalan throughout my childhood, and teenage years. And, as I've said before on the Sixth Sense review, there's only now one other Shyamalan that I kind of, I think is very, very even to the Sixth Sense. And yes, this is the film for me that really is very, very close, and I'm not going to reveal which one I prefer, of course. We'll have to wait for the ranking for that, but this one, it really is close for me. Yeah, so I do think it's one of the best films ever made. I think it's definitely in my top 100, we'll just get that out of the way. But yes, it's very, very controversial, very divisive. This has only got, I believe, a 6.7 on IMDb, 59 on Metacritic, so not to it's very, very divisive, very controversial. It's done very well at the box office, kind of. It has got a very strong fan base out there, but most people at least bash on the ending as one of the worst of all time. So yes, this is going to be a spoiler review, minor spoilers, well, just towards the end really, when we talk about the ending of the film. Because yes, I think it is kind of necessary for me to kind of review this while defending the ending. Clearly I am a supporter of the ending, and yeah, in a nutshell, I think it's one of the best final acts of the film. But yes, basically, this film, when I first saw it, I was absolutely blown away. I was obsessed with this film. It was the first, I believe it was the first Shyamalan that I saw. Yeah, it was. And of course, I saw The Village, roughly a year after it came out. And I'd seen The Sixth Sense as well around the time of seeing this, maybe a year or two after this. But yes, I'd never seen Unbreakable around then. As I've said before, that was the first time I first saw that. Was last year, February. And yes, I think this is just, for me, one of the best. As a sci-fi film, it does everything right, and it smartly doesn't actually show, a lot of the greatness is actually in what Shyamalan doesn't show, what he suggests, and kind of what you feel, and just the kind of exploration of the different ideas of what could happen, that kind of builds all the tension, the atmosphere. And of course, you've got the kind of appearances mainly in the final act, but really even then, it's not this big, kind of all out. For example, it's not like Close Encounters, although again, that's not your typical alien film, if you must. And yeah, it does have some appearances of the actual aliens, and most of the stuff though is actually seen on the TV, the kind of you can kind of see that, and you see the crop circles and. Yeah, it's mostly discussed or suggested, and this film basically, the main character, played by Mel Gibson, Graham, he's a former priest. He kind of gave it all up and he's basically, as we know in the film, he's a farmer and he's got a small family that live with him, on the farm, and yeah, basically Graham, played by Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson, when he's on form, is one of my favourite actors. I think this is probably his second best performance. For me, Braveheart is his best performance and film, actually. Yes, so, I think he's a great actor, and he is perfect in this. He's basically the protagonist, and, the kind of, he's got two kids, and, Beau and Morgan, one of them played by Rory Culkin, who is just brilliant in the film. You know, these first three kind of Shyamalan films. Well, not his first films, but Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, and this just got some of the best child performances. Really, it's quite striking. And once again, and Rory Culkin in this film is absolutely brilliant. And of course, you've got Bo as well as the sister. And of course, they live with Meryl, played by Joaquin Phoenix. And Joaquin Phoenix is just probably one of the 30 best actors of all time for me. I think he's just one of the best. He never really gives it. I've never seen a performance that isn't good from him. And he just some of his very best performances. Just some of the best of all time. The Master, Walk the Line, just so good. Inherent Vice, which is very, very underrated for me. And this, he's so good in this film. Actually, it's just brilliant. And it's not, it's one of his earliest roles, you could say. And I think you've got these four main characters. You've also got a police officer of Caroline, and basically just this other character, really, Ray, who's played by M. Night Shyamalan himself, and for me, it's his best, role. It's not really a cameo; it's actually a proper role in the film. An actual character has a lot of involvement in this film, and that's the main sort of characters in the film. And yeah, you start off with the stuff cropping up, literally, crop circles. And yes, basically on this farm, and it slowly escalates. You start to see some things, actual, appearances, and they hear noises and all this kind of stuff. The radio, the kind of monitor, pick up all these signals, and it all unfolds from there. It becomes very, very clear that it's a global thing. This whole alien invasion, you could say. And yes, the rest of the film is a deep exploration of faith. Family units, really, kinship, and hope, in general, all this kind of stuff. You've got this whole wonderful narrative, and where you learn more and more about, what happened with the wife, because she, of course, they all live together, and Meryl lives with, who's the brother, of course, lives with, Graham, because of what happened, really, with the wife. She got killed in an accident, shortly before, the events of this film, by Ray, the character played by M. Night Shyamalan. He, had an accident, drove into her, basically. And you learn, as the film goes on, more and more about that. You see it in flashbacks. And, basically, while that's happening, you've got the escalation of, the invasion, you could say, and the appearances. And this film is just, it succeeds in every area. It's a wonderful, family film, you could say. A stunning sci-fi film, where just every element of sci-fi is just wonderfully, portrayed here. It's just so good, this film. James Newton Howard, once again, of course, the score in this film is wonderful. Is it his best? No, probably not. But it's, all these first kind of four ones that he worked with Shyamalan on are also, wonderful in their own ways. It's hard to decide, what's the best for me out of The Village and Unbreakable. The score's there, but again, this is wonderful in its own way. The Sixth Sense is mind-blowing too. He's just one of the best composers. This one, you could say, is more of a traditional thriller, in the way that it kind of is in the score. But yes, it's got some really, really moving stuff in the score towards the end as well. And yes, this film, I think this film really makes me feel so much. The atmosphere is absolutely masterful. Once again, Shyamalan, the script to this film is so beautiful. It really is. It's less of a thriller than the other ones, really. In the sense that things unraveling. This is a very, very much more, you could say, linear, kind of typical sci-fi film. But then again, it's not. It's very, very different. But yeah, it's more kind of genre, sci-fi than actual a thriller, a mystery thriller. Although this is just one of the tensest films, and he does set a particular atmosphere very early on. Very, very atmospheric. But the way that Shyamalan, builds the tension throughout this film is just genius. This is probably one of the tensest films I've seen. And the use of silence in this film, just some of the very best in cinema for me. I think just really wonderful here. And of course, you've got these rousing moments as well. When the music kicks in, you've got these big, big scenes, but it's really, really just spiritual, quiet moments throughout the film. Just wonderful. The characters in this film, I think some of the best in cinema. Meryl and Graham for me. You know, I just absolutely love them. The relationships, you know, just these four main characters really. It's just so warm and tender, you know, heartfelt, and I just loved everything in this film. You know, I always do. There's a really particular kind of feeling that I get. It's just a comfortable, you could say relaxed, just at ease feeling. You know, whenever I watch this film, very comforting to me. You know, I just love to rewatch this. It always makes me feel just brilliant. It's a film that kind of uplifts. You know, it moves me. You know, it's just great comedy in this film. You know, that's the thing that Shyamalan does wonderfully. In these early ones, you know, maybe not his later ones, but yes, some of them anyway. You know, I think the way he uses comedy is brilliant. It's always used to kind of actually make the film more human. You know, and it's just wonderful. There's so much comedy throughout this film actually, and you know, it's also very, you know, it takes itself seriously. It's so focused. This film really, absolutely so focused, and it's just so human, deep, and spiritual. You know, philosophical, and you know, I think the way this film is shot, really, in many regards, this is kind of the best shot Shyamalan film, actually for me. I think it's better cinematography than Unbreakable. You know, Sixth Sense in this, and The Village actually, we'll get to that when I review it. You know, very close actually for the cinematography. But it's just so perfect here, you know, and it's got the wonderful ways to captures, you know, all the nature in the film. The location is very low key, small scale, you could say, and that's a really amazing thing that he does. He keeps this film very small scale, certainly at first, and you never really kind of leave this farm, this house, you know, throughout the film, but you kind of hear about, you know, you see on the TV, and you kind of, you know, very in small moments, you experience all these going ons, you know, they take a trip, you know, early on, you know, into town, but the rest of the film really is just them in this house and around it, on the farm. And you never really see much else, you know, other towns or anything. Even though there's this massive, you know, kind of, you know, invasion going on, alien, you know, appearances all over the world. You see it. You see mostly just this location, and that just makes it. It's just so effective there. You know, kind of, it makes you feel, you know, like you can kind of get invested in this. You know, kind of connected to it, as if you're actually there, kind of thing. But also the way that kind of Shyamalan makes it more, you know, bigger scale as the film goes on. It never loses the personal touch though, but it just kind of has the perfect balance between, you know, small, large scale. You know, this is a film about, you know, it's a disaster film in many ways, you could say, but you know, it's just one of the most personal and truest explorations of, you know, faith, you know, and kind of one's place. But it's just so deep, this film, and you know, so entertaining. You know, the uses of music in this film, you know, perfect. You know, and just, I think every act of this film, you know, you've got the kind of, you know, the mystery, and the kind of the kind of appearances at first, you know, the first act, and you've got all the different, you know, everyone believing different things. You know, the clash of, you know, ideals, you could say, and the conflict there is perfectly set up. And then you've got, of course, people actually, you know, realizing and believing in it, you know, in the middle. And then, of course, you know, it becomes more of a survival film. And then the final act, as I've said, is just one of the best, most realised, you know, final acts in the film for me. We'll get to that. You know, I think, you know, every act of this film is perfect. Many people, of course, you know, criticise the ending, you know, to this film. And of course, here comes, you know, the spoilers, you could say. And yeah, basically, you know, people say the last sort of 10 minutes of the film, you know, is trash. Some people say that, of course, and that's fine. Everyone has their own opinions, but the reasons why, you know, I have to kind of explain why. Of course, I will give this film full marks, and I don't think the ending is flawed. I think it's amazing. People say, of course, about the thing with water, the reveals, and basically, you know, of course, why would they come to Earth, you know, if they knew that there was water on the Earth and that would kill them? Well, first of all, you know, I think this is a very different, you know, take for Shyamalan, you know, on sci-fi and, you know, alien films. You know, of course, very famously, he grew up, you know, watching things like E.T. and everything. He was a very big fan, you know, of Spielberg. You know, most people are, of course. But yes, basically, he paid a very different homage to things, and it's his own take on it, and just it kind of many people I think maybe assume too much that these aliens are going to be completely highly intelligent, and they know everything before even coming onto the planet. Not every alien. Not every alien, and of course there is life out there, but who's to say that they just didn't know that there was water on the planet, or of course as well, the fact that there's been many hints throughout the film that they are very, very desperate, and they're possibly coming, to kind of just for different materials, but they could be as aware as well that there is water, but it is a risk, but that's a risk they're willing to take because they are very, very desperate, and yes, of course, there is technically, atmosphere, water in the atmosphere, and again, that kind of plays into it. But again, they could be kind of trying to get materials in desperation, and of course, yes, taking the risk, and it's not as if as well that they're made out to be perfect specimens. They can't open pantry doors, they can't open normal doors. They have trouble with this, so. There's many different hints throughout the film, and maybe comments on our kind of views on alien life, as well as just different alien films. These aren't going to be exactly the same to every alien we've seen in films or heard about. And I think that's very very easy to kind of say. Or the fact that they went onto a planet with 70% water is kind of stupid. What awful twist, but I think there's many different possibilities the aliens could kind of be thinking, and they could just simply not be aware of water. If, it might not have been on their planet. Of course it probably wasn't, and just again the thing of desperation, the kind of scouring for resources, and the fact that they just needed to take the risk, and in the end they weren't successful, some of them, that kind of plays into it as well. And yes, there's many other different possibilities that I'm not going to go through them all, but basically I think at the end of the day, I kind of am more open to what the aliens kind of their knowledge and all this kind of stuff, and I never really thought it's kind of stupid, because I kind of think there's obviously going to be some aliens out there that are not completely perfect specimens. They might not know of water, or they simply might be coming despite the fact that they could be allergic and all this kind of stuff, and it's just kind of I think a bit one-sided to kind of say that it's a failed twist, and it's awful, it's not being thought through. I believe it was, and of course yes, I think the twist for me is brilliant actually, and that's not been me being a fanboy. I think it's an amazing final act. It's a rousing final act where everything comes together, and you can kind of many people of course will think the ending's crap, and that's fine, but yeah, basically I wanted to explain why I don't think the ending's bad at all. I think it's a brilliant ending, and of course I just think the assumptions of aliens in general is very, very different to kind of what Shyamalan was going for here, and it's not as if he didn't think it through. Definitely not. I doubt that. It's just the case that many people what they expect of alien films, aliens in general. They think maybe too much of every alien. In that sense, there's many different, of course, life forms out there, and it's just kind of about imagination at the end of the day. But yeah, basically, that's my thoughts on the ending. That's why I think it's great, and if you think it's awful, that's fine. It's understandable. It's very, very, of course, controversial and everything, and many people have different views on aliens and everything. But yes, I think it's a great final act. Of course, everything in this film links together. Of course, you've got the exploration of faith, and just the way it culminates, it's just truly, for me, wonderful filmmaking. And yes, the characters in this film, I cared about all the characters. I think it's just so wonderful, in its humanity. This film, I think there's so many moments, so many scenes. It's just scene after scene, of greatness. I think this film, in its script, in its direction, in its tone, its mood, the atmosphere that's kind of set very early on. it's just truly something. You know, it's a very, very layered film. Very, you know, a simple plot. You know, that kind of is told very, very clearly. And it's just, for me, it's masterful storytelling. It's Shyamalan possibly at its best. And I think, you know, all the performances are perfect in this film. Mel Gibson, you know, Joaquin Phoenix, of course, Rory Culkin, all absolutely fantastic in this film. And, you know, I think the music, the use of music, is perfect. You know, I think really this is an absolutely wonderful film. You know, it's full of wonder as well, of course, which is key, you know, in a sci-fi film. And, you know, Shyamalan always brought these kind of elements to his films anyway. And, of course, him going, you know, to make a sci-fi film full on, it kind of was the perfect, you know, kind of opportunity, really. And, you know, in many ways, as I say, this is the best Shyamalan film for me. You know, I think this and The Sixth Sense, you know, very, very close. I'm not going to reveal exactly what I think now. You know, I think it used to be, you know, when I was quite a lot younger, it would definitely be Signs. But, you know, over the years, you know, maybe in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, I thought, you know, very, very close. It's just kind of how I feel in one particular day. You know, it could be The Sixth Sense, it could be Signs, and the fact that Unbreakable is also in my top 100 says it all, really. You know, I think Shyamalan, when on form, as I've said before, one of the very, very best directors of all time. And these first, you know, 3 of his big films. You know, I'm not going to talk about The Village yet, but I'll be reviewing that on Sunday. Yes, these films, these first 3 that I've reviewed, not his first 3 films, they are absolute masterpieces. And of course, this gets full marks from me. And once again, it gets an easy rating of 100% plus, tier 1. Yes, I think it's one of the very best films ever made. Just the way it kind of is a deep and moving, you know, exploration of faith. You know, I just absolutely loved, you know, these characters and the kind of warmth of the family. It's so peaceful, this film, but it's also very, very, you know, of course, tense. You know, it's some of the best uses of silence in a film that I've ever, you know, encountered. The way that Shyamalan is able to kind of build suspense and kind of not reveal everything. But yes, you know, just kind of gradually as well, you know, in the exposition, you know, with the kind of death of the wife and all this kind of stuff, he brings it together so well, you know, and including the final act, as I've said, perfectly. And you know, I think, you know, of course, the scene, you know, swing away. It just, for me, I've never, you know, doubted it. I've always thought it's just so perfect. You know, I think it's such a confident film, but also very, very, you know, very subtle, nuanced, you know, patient film. And, you know, every act for me is absolutely perfect. I think this is just, it's full of wonder, full of hope. You know, it's a wonderful, wonderful film. You know, and it does everything right and more. I think it's one of the best sci-fi films ever made. You know, and just Mel Gibson, Joaquin Phoenix, you know, absolutely brilliant in this film. Mel Gibson's second best performance. You know, and one of Joaquin's many you know, masterful performances for me. And absolutely love this film. You know, I think it's always going to be one of my favourite films of all time. You know, it's in my top 100. It always has been. And yes, Signs for me, you know, of course, yeah, I do think it's better than, you know, films like Citizen Kane, you know, and actually Casablanca as well. You know, films like this, I think Signs is literally one of the best films ever made. Not a popular, you know, kind of opinion to say that, but yeah, that's just my opinion. I think it's even better than, you know, Close Encounters for me, which is very, very rare. You know, as a sci-fi film, this just is one of the very best films ever made. And no, it's not as good as E.T. for me. But yes, yeah, Signs is just an absolute masterpiece. This is in my tier 1s. And, you know, this, The Sixth Sense and Unbreakable, you know, I've reviewed these films. They're all perfect for me. They're all masterpieces. And, you know, really, this and The Sixth Sense, very, very close. And, you know, I think, once again, you know, just absolutely loved going through this set. You know, these 3 films, wow, you know, this is just, what a treat, you know, this is, you know, and kind of rewatching them every time, you know, it's just been amazing. Next up, of course, is The Village, DVD, unfortunately. This has never actually been released on Blu-ray. I don't know when it will be because it's not that popular, but yes. This film, again, very, very special to me. So I can't wait to watch that again on Sunday. And yes, very, very unpopular review that'll be. I absolutely love that film and can't wait to review it. So yes, Signs, for me, an absolute masterpiece. And yeah, thanks for watching my review.